Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 12 in the discourse Mimana, which is the Afar Yakov, which is the eighth discourse in the great book Beshosh Ekdimu 5672. Again, this is class number 12 in this discourse, and it's the fourth class in chapter 31. Last class, I made a mistake when in the recording. I said it's the second class, which last class was actually the third class in chapter 31. This is the fourth class in chapter 31. Okay, so we were learning about the idea in the previous class about Nakuda, Kav, Shetach. Nakuda is point, Kav is a line, and Shetach is space. Last class, we were learning primarily about the second level called Kav, which Kav over here, the line, is what it basically means is the revelation of. To a certain degree, it's a level of revelation, unlike the state of Nakuda, where everything that it contained, all the possible. Everything that it contains, all the potential, all the files that are inside of it, all the sphirot that are inside of it, are unnoticeable, like we discussed last week, like a folder, but you don't know what's inside the folder, but it's all there, and it all looks like just one folder. There's no this, and that. But then you click on the folder and it opens up. That's Nakuda. But that's Kav. What reveals itself is nothing more that there is 10 files inside this folder, but they're not in any way describable and in a particularized fashion enough that we should be able to define them. It's just revealing what it has inside, but whatever comes out is coming out in its essence. And since it's coming out in its essence, as he explains earlier, which is the hiyuli. The hiyuli means the abstraction of the abstraction, the essence of it, which is still not revealing itself, and therefore they all look the same. But there is really, you can see already 10. And then remember, he compared it to the concept of nikudim in the realm of those in a later state where you have akudim nikudim, which is the idea. Nikudim is the world of tohu, where the spheroids come out. Over there, they also come out in all their strength. And that would be similar to this level, but there's a major differentiation like we learned in last class, because in the state of Nekudim, they are revealing themselves to express themselves, to dominate, to come forth. Here, it's like a person revealing himself to himself. It's just about moving out into revelation, but not to dominate. And that's the reason why, due to their subtlety, due to their non-definition, they can all still stand as dots connected to each other in one line without any clashing and without any friction going on between them. That's the idea of Nakuda. I'm sorry, not of Nakuda. That's the idea of Kav. The Nakuda is the first stage, the SS Sphirot, as they are still in the source. That's the point, the decimal point. Then they come out as 10 points, and that forms a line. And now we're going to learn about the next stage, which is Shetach, which the Oires go into Kalim. So let's see over here. We're holding right after the parentheses. The Im Yoisen, even though the Hakav, that the Kav, that this line, which is the first revelation of the Or Ein Sof after the Tzimtzum, who B'chinas Miyut Or is in a state of diminishment of light, Legabe Nakuda, when you compare it to the Nakuda, to the initial state. Remember, we learned that there's two types of tzimtzum. I remind you all. We learned that there's two types of tzimtzum. There is first the tzimtzum in Or Ein Sof, in the first level of the Or Ein Sof, which requires a complete tzimtzum b'derech siluk, in a manner of removal completely. That's the Or Ein Sof A, like we discussed earlier, where there is the Or Ein Sof not as where it doesn't even have, where it's not even a potential for 10 sphirot. It's a potential for infinite sphirot. That level has to be removed completely. But then we said there is a second level of tzimtzum, which is the tzimtzum as it affects a weaker tzimtzum, a weaker contraction, which affects the lower level of the Or Ein Sof, which is the Or Ein Sof that's already a source that contains the Esa Spheres HaGnuzais, the 10 hidden spheres. However, even on this level, we said, in order for it to reveal itself as individual, not as one or klali, not as one point. To move it from a point to a line requires a tzimtzum, a contraction. And what kind of tzimtzum? The first tzimtzum. However, it's not bederech siluk. It doesn't remove the light completely. It's bederech miyut. It's by in a manner of diminishment. But a dimming, a very big dimming. If so, if the lights are now so dimmed, why are we saying that the sphirot are similar to they are in their source? It's just that they're enumerating, they're coming out. But really, they're still as they were before. They're not as they were. They're already tremendously dimmed. So he explains over here. It evolves a diminishment of the light. Compared to the nekuda, compared to the point, the concentrated, the point that has it all. Like we said earlier in chapter 22, which in the idea of the tzimtzum in the root of the lights, in order for it to go from an or klali, from a general light, like we said, like the concept of a word, baruch, a word, and then you have to take each letter and throw it out individually. It's a powerful reduction. Or like a teacher who has one powerful idea, and then they spend an entire semester unpacking it into many, many classes. It was all concentrated in the mind of the teacher as one point. So to go from that higher point of the mind of the teacher to go into the individual classes is an enormous reduction of the light. Through this diminishes the light when it goes into a state of specification. Nevertheless, that's true. Yeah. In comparison to the Nakuda, it's to the point, to the Esespheris Agnuzais, to the Or Klali, to the general light. Yeah, for sure, it's a big tzimtzum, it's a big contraction, it's a big diminishment. However, looking down to the next level, to stage number 3, when the light goes into vessels, this light is still considered extremely, extremely abstract. It's still in a state of simplicity. Remember we said this, and this is the level where we say Esespheris, 10 attributes. The Esespheris Gnuzais, you can't even call it 10 attributes. We say it's Gnuzais, it's a potential. The Gnuzais means it's hidden there, but not like 10 attributes. On this level, it's already 10 attributes. However, Belima, this is very important, without a substance. That means you can't define them. The Chachma is Chachma, but not really Chachma. It's not even called Chachma. It's Belima without a ma, meaning without a somethingness. When we compare them to the next stage, when these very abstract lights go into vessels, when they go into vessels, it's a whole new story. And that's what he's explaining now. Now we come to stage number 3, when that line evolves into an entire space, which means the line expands in all directions to create a 3D kind of space, a cube or whatever it is. This is already the lights as they become enclosed in vessels. That the light already becomes the light of Chachma, and it becomes the light of kindness, according to the substance of the vessels. In other words, the lights now become tangible, as we say, and it becomes more, you can sense that this is Chachma, this is wisdom, this is a kind energy, a soft energy, and this is a rigid energy, it's a Gevura energy and the like. And that's because the Kalim, the vessels, once they absorb the light, they drag the lights down. They make the lights be like the vessels. And they're no more in a state of simplicity and abstraction, like the lights were when they were alone, not vested in vessels. So much so that they have now become so defined, so to speak, that now they're able to, when this energy now goes into a state of creativity, when it goes forth and it affects the production of worlds, of the 3 lower worlds, Bria, Yatzir, and Nasi, which is real creation, which is real limitation, and real definition. That means the energy has to be already have so much character and definition that it creates divine worlds. Of course, the energy is much higher than the world it creates, but the very notion that it creates such definitive worlds is because the energy has gotten a certain character in this process. Kfi oifen hakelim, which means it creates the creation of the world. For that, you need energy. But the energy is operating in accordance to the quality of the vessels. That means when God is creating water, which water is a very kind form of a creation. It's a different energy. It's a different divine life force that is bringing about fire. Fire is created from a complete different energy. Fire is being created from Gevura, and water is being created from Chesed. So that means that the energy, the differences don't only begin in the creation. The differences are already in the life force that's making them. The life force that's the underlying letters of God that are producing water, H2O. They are kind letters that express kindness, and because it's coming from the sphere of Chesed, and the energy that creates fire is a different type of words. Or words are more of a harsh word, more of a disciplining type of a word, and it's stemming from the Gevura. And how the lights are simple. The answer is once the vessels take hold of the lights, they color the lights in accordance to their coloring. And the example for this, would be that you can have an abstract energy, but when it's applied through a vessel, the vessel lowers the energy in accordance to the vessel. We give a very beautiful example. We all know the story. We mentioned it a while ago in one of these classes, that when the Jewish people came and cried out that they wanted meat in the desert, Moshe said to God, where am I going to give them meat? How do I have meat for them? And then God says, okay, and Moshe says, it's too much for me, these people. They're driving me insane, right? That's what Moshe seems to be saying. I can't take care of them anymore. And then God says to him, you know what, I'll give you help. I'll send you assistance. I'll give you 70 Zakanim, 70 elders. The question is, what does Moshe mean? How can I give them meat? And everything else that happened until then, Moshe was able to provide. He provided because God gave him the ability. So why suddenly Moshe revolts? I can't give them meat. How can I have them? Like, why? So it's explained. Moshe wasn't questioning God's ability. Moshe knew that he was appointed to be the shepherd of the Jewish people, knowing that he is in charge to supplying them with all. We know that all of the nurture that is given to the flock, it comes from the shepherd. The shepherd is in charge. He has to make sure to provide. It's his responsibility to provide. And so spiritually, it's the same way. The shepherd of Israel, whoever that is, the leader of the Jewish people, needs to provide for the Jewish people all their needs. Obviously, he's being empowered by God, but still, he's the one who's responsible for their needs. Now, this is not only that he has to figure out which field, where there's good pastural land. Spiritually, it means that all the flow of divine energy, which brings any blessing to anybody in the generation, flows through the leader of the generation. The leader of the generation's neshama has to first receive all the sustenance. That's why it's so important to be connected to a Rebbe, to a tzaddik, because all your sustenance comes through the soul of the tzaddik. That's what it says. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu had no problem when it came to man. He had no problem, which was the manna that he gave them, the bread, because everybody needs bread. But when the Jewish people were asking for meat, that's already coarse. That's coarse. And Moshe was saying to God, I can't provide such a coarse item. I don't relate to it. My people should be. It's almost like a shepherd who has a flock of sheep. Flock of sheep. He knows what he gives them to eat, grass. He can provide grass. But suddenly these sheep want to eat, food that's just not. It's not meant for. It's very coarse. It's not what a shepherd signs up for. These sheep got ideas in their head to want something that they. Shepherd says, this is not my field. I can't give you jelly beans. I don't operate with jelly beans. I operate with grass. That's what I can give. Moshe's saying, this is so coarse. I can't lower myself down to that state to provide it for them. So God says, I get you. God wasn't upset. God says, I'm going to give you attendance. You're right. It's there. You can't communicate on that level, on that coarse level of meat. You can't communicate it. So I'm going to send you people that are not on your lofty level. You're going to transmit your higher type of energy to them. And then they are going to then take that energy that you're giving them and lower it down so that that energy, that life force can provide meat. And there it says the words va'atzalti min haruach. I will separate, I will bestow rather from the spirit that is upon you, Moshe, and I will put it upon them. So God is telling Moshe that they will be like bouncing off Moshe's light. So we learned about this way earlier, that this is the root of the word atzilus. That's the first time we see the word lahatzil. Lahatzil is the root of the word atzilus, which atzilus is this world that mediates between the Ein Sof and the creation. And what's the point of atzilus? It's where the infinite light of God kind of gets bounced off by something lower so that it can relate to the finiteness of the world. God is infinite. So these are the divine attributes with the vessels. Now, of course, it's not like Moshe and the Zekanim, where the Zekanim were kind of like separate beings. They were in him. They were attached to him, but they were in him. But Atzilus is all God. But it's like a much lower level. And then when God feeds his light through Atzilus, the Atzilus now conditions the light to be much lower so that when these energies can now affect the effects of a finite creation, to create a finite creation. It's literally the same idea of Moshe, where Moshe says, I'm too lofty for such a coarse request. So God says, let's coarsen you up a little bit. Let's coarsen your energy up a little bit by bringing people that are a little bit coarser than you, and they will able to coarsen up the light, thicken it a little bit so that the people, so that's the idea. And this is using as an example how you see that when the light goes into the vessels, the light is then thickened through the vessels. What do you mean thickened? It becomes more something. It gets more design. When Moshe's spirit, see the Zekanim, they're not the shepherds of the Jewish people. The elders, they're not the shepherd. They cannot provide. Moshe has to provide. But Moshe provides via them. Moshe channels his light. He beams his light into their souls. And then once it goes through this, it's filtered through their souls. From them, it goes to the people. So again, through this, that Moshe's energy dwelled on the Zekanim. He was able to deliver the meat. Which was not able to be from the spirit of Moshe himself, not through the elders. And this is what it says: I will emanate. That's where emanations come from. I will emanate from the spirit that's upon you. I will put it upon them. There are two things over here. It says two things. I will emanate from your spirit, and I will put it upon them. So he explains, these are two levels. Emanating from Moshe's spirit is the light itself. That would be correspondent. We said earlier there is the singular nekuda, the esespheres agnuzais that are in the Ein Sof. And then there is when it becomes 10, Hashem emanates, differentiates it. So that would be similar to the stage of Hashem emanating Moshe's light, but it's not yet acclimated, it's not yet conditioned, it's not yet filtered in the vessels because it hasn't yet descended into the vessels. It's just an emanation. It's 70 beams of light coming out of Moshe, which are now meant to enter into these 70 elders. But then it says something else. V'samti aleim, I will place it upon them. That's the next stage, where it actually enters the vessels of the Zekanim. And that compares to stage number 3, when the lights of the Ein Sof go in, the 10 Sphirot lights go into the vessels, and they become vesselized. So it says there's two things of it. There is the emanation of the spirit of Moshe, and then that which it lands and rests on the elders. What does that mean? The Batzilus Rucha Shel Moshe, and the emanation of Moshe Levad. If it would just emanate Moshe's spirit on the Zakenim, but the lights would not become processed in the soul of the Zakenim, then they still would not be able to give meat, because the energy would be still in the level of Moshe. Even though it is a descent, the very fact that it's leaving Moshe is already a descent. It still was not able to produce meat, because Moshe's spirit does not relate to meat. He can't fathom the desire of a human being to have meat. You have a piece of bread, be happy, you're alive. Now you can study Torah and connect to God. What do you need? Meat? What are you, crazy? A piece of salami? Moshe couldn't relate to that. It went and it dwelled on the Zakenim, on the elders. They are way inferior to Moshe. So what does it do now to the spirit of Moshe? It becomes ba'ofen kazeh. It's still Moshe's spirit, because if it would become disconnected from Moshe, it wouldn't have any power to do anything. It has to be connected to the source. Moshe has to constantly provide. But instead of it being, Moshe's illumination, which would charge them with spiritual lights, it has to go through something that's going to physicalize it, so to speak. It's going to thicken it. So through the spirit of Moshe now descending, it should be through in it, and through it, or should come the meat. As it is known, every hashpa can only be through Moshe. Every influence to the Jewish people, and this is so powerful. Every bit, anything that happens in the world has to come through the tzaddik. There's that one brain of the Jewish people, that's the tzaddik, the central tzaddik. In our case, it's the Rebbe. His neshama is provider of the entire world. And through him, the light reaches, and everything, not just spiritual things. It's not if you need inspiration, you need to do tshuva, hope the Rebbe's light will, every little, everybody's, anything. Any physical need, everything goes through the tzaddik. That's why the better connected we are, the better we're living our lives. And the same is also in the emanation of the lights. Now we're going to apply the same idea to the world of emanation. When the lights are emanated and are revealed from their source, from their root and from their source in the Esespheres Agnuzais. But when they originally emanate, when do they originally emanate? The first revelation of them is in the Kav. So when they're coming out from their hidden state in the Esespheres Agnuzais, even though there's 10, but they're still without substance. They're still very lofty and very abstract. So therefore, they're not yet within the capability. It's not within the range to become a source for finite worlds, for Bria, which is creation, Yetzirah, formation, Asiya, and the world of completion. But only through this, that this very lights become then enclosed in vessels. Through this, the vessels in which they are entering into grabs them and makes the light become more bringing out the character, the very, very subtle, unnoticeable potential element that's in the light. It highlights it and brings it out and makes it, and it pronounces it. For it to become a source, which he and his vessels and his containers, which is referring to the light, and now that it's in the containers, in the vessels, together they're one with him, livrei, to create, which through that Hashem creates the worlds. Kitzer. Now let's see the summary. The summary on this chapter, Mazel Tov, we finished chapter 31. This is the idea of a point and a line and a space. Nakuda yatzmius. Nakuda is the essence, visharshia oiros, and it's the root of the lights. Kavu is galus and adeyat tzimtzum. The kav is the revelation, the line adeyat tzimtzum through the contraction. Bebchenes spheres pratios. Now it comes out into be individual sephirot. Bebchenes nekudas pshutais. But what kind of it's a kav, a line is a bunch of points, but still in a very abstract nekuda, abstract points. Vahiyulis and very lofty, very high, very much its essence, not its. Ukamai, and as remember we learned, he says in the parentheses, similar to the world of Nekudim, which is different than Akudim. In Akudim, everything was in one vessel, and in the world of Nekudim, each sphera comes out already in a vessel, but in a very, very poignant vessel, not in a developed, not in a descriptive manner, in a very point, just points. Rakshama as galus, but remember we learned the difference. We discussed it on the beginning of the class today, but listen to last class for this. Over there, his galus was in a way where they did not form a line, where they formed, each one ran off each point ran off into its own universe, and they didn't communicate with each other, and they shattered. Because over there they emerge out to be something. And by the kav, the kav is also a revelation of the details, and it's already the beginning of differentiation. But since they're not yet each one expressing itself in order to be, but rather just a revelation of what's inside, not to dominate, that's why they're different, as we discussed earlier. And now he goes back. This is the idea that the kav is made up of nekudas, of points. But then when it becomes a full space, that's when the light is referring to the light goes into vessels. Now they become thickened, they become an existence of wisdom and of chesed. Lamed Beis. With this we concluded chapter 31, and we will continue Be'ezus Hashem tomorrow, chapter 32, with Hashem's help.